is good people? You are now listening to another episode of Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. I am your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth, and it's great to be back in the house again to record another podcast. Hope y'all are doing well. This past weekend, I took a little trip up to Charlotte, just to get away from the crib for a little bit, just to recharge and refresh my batteries, and to partake in some other activities as well. So I'll get into all of that. So let's start back to the very beginning of the trip. So I got up about Friday morning, left the house about 6 o'clock, and headed on up to Charlotte. I-26, then got to Columbia, took I-7. I arrived in Charlotte roughly around 9 o'clock. And normally when I go up to Charlotte, the first place I'll stop is on Beatty's Ford Road, and specifically at a place called Archive. And Archive, I love it. It's a Black-owned coffee shop. Soon as you walk in, it's just, oh man, it's just, everything is just covered in just like Black memorabilia. You go in the bathroom, it's just like full of the walls are just adorned with cutouts from Ebony magazine. It's a super dope place, man. And I got the ashwagandha tea, which I highly recommend. And that was really good. And picked up a couple magazines and a couple of prints that I'm gonna hang up in the spaceship a little bit later. And then after I left there, I went to, there was actually a mural that they just unveiled on Beatty's Ford. It's actually a mural that has John P. Key, Fantasia, and Anthony Hamilton. And I never thought I would ever see John P. Key on a mural, especially because he was a big staple in the Foxworth household growing up. And that was really dope to see in person. I'm silly me. I did not even think to take a picture of it, but next time I'm up there, I'll capture a picture. And then the next thing I did was make my way uptown, and of course had to stop at the Mint Museum. Well, actually, no, I went to the gym first, got my workout out of the way, then continue my trek down North Tryon Street, which is the main drag in uptown Charlotte. I mean, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see all of the stuff behind me on the back and on the wall. I'm an art junkie. I'm just a super art gallery / museum nerd. And first place I stopped was the Beckler Museum of Modern Art, which never disappoints. And then I went right next door to the Mint Museum, and they just started an Ernie Barnes exhibition. And for those of y'all who aren't familiar with Ernie Barnes, he's a Black artist. He actually started as a professional football player, and then once he hung up the cleats, he pivoted his career into the world of fine art. He is most famous for painting a picture called the Sugar Shack, which is basically a painting of a bunch of Black folks getting down at this Sugar Shack. He said it was inspired. He's originally from Durham, North Carolina. If you ever watched the episode of the TV show Good Times, this is actually the painting that they show on the intro to Good Times. That original painting was hung up in the Mint Museum, and he said he got the inspiration from it by sneaking into a juke joint as a preteen growing up in Durham, North Carolina. And man, I smiled so big being able to see the literal OG painting of the Sugar Shack in person. That was super dope. And then left the Mint Museum, then walked a couple steps across the street and went to the Harvey Gantt Museum of African American History. Then after I left from uptown, I made my way to a spot called Camp North End, which I had never been to, but I always seen pictures of it online. And that's a real dope spot in Charlotte. Basically, it's a facility where they have different food spots and a lot of retail spots. And that was real cool to see. It was something else in the previous iteration, and they just completely remodeled and renovated it. It was really cool. And also, no matter what city I go to, I always make it a habit to go shopping for vinyls. And Camp North End happened to have a vinyl spot called Hardy Boys Records. And shout out to them. I bought some vinyls from there, and then after I left Camp North End, then I made my way went to go check into my hotel. Took a quick nap just to recharge. For one of the main reasons why I came up to Charlotte for the trip was to go to one of my favorite podcasts, The Black Guy Who Tips. They do a live show every year. And so I wanted to just take a nap and recharge and get ready for that event. But after I left the hotel, I went back uptown and pre-gamed at a restaurant called Sea Level. I've been following Sea Level for a long time on IG, and I always was intrigued by the pictures of their food. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try that one day. And so that Friday evening, I stopped to get some vittles and pregame for the live show. And man, that food was incredible. I had the fried shrimp po' boy, which was really good. And they have a happy hour special from 2 to 6 where all the half shell oysters are only $1.50. So I got the shrimp po' boy and I got, probably about 10 half shell oysters, man. I ate myself silly and I don't regret that one bit. So big shout out to Sea Level. And then after I left there, the theater that the live show was at was called the Stage Door Theater. It's quite literally right across the street from Sea Level. So it only took me maybe 75 steps to walk from Sea Level to the entrance to the Stage Door Theater. And so I walk in, scan my ticket for the Black Guy Who Tips live show, and man, what an experience. I went and took my seat, and then people slowly started to file in to take their seats, and everybody's talking amongst themselves and chopping it up. And so I'm sitting there, just waiting for the show to begin. He had the Kendrick GNX album playing from beginning to end, so everybody in there was jamming. And then more people slowly started to file in, and then I looked, and I was like, man, that looks like Felt 5. And Felt 5 he's a rapper / producer, and he contributes a lot of music to the Black Guy Who Tips podcast. So it was really cool being able to see him and meet him in real life. And then as soon as he walks in, then here comes Dom Rivera. I was like, yo, I did not expect to see him here. Dom Rivera is a super dope comedian. He has a podcast called The Mind of Dom, and it was really cool. And then there was an empty seat next to me. So a lady walks in. She asked me if the seat is available. I'm like, yeah, it's available. And so, she sits down, chopping it up. And then I'm noticing this super heavy Baltimore accent, a lot of to and do. And I was like, wait a minute. Then I saw she was wearing an Orioles jersey. And then as soon as I saw the Orioles jersey, the light bulb went off in my head, and I immediately matched the name with the face. I was like, that's Deasia. That's she's Brains and Buns on IG. Wine connoisseur. And man, we had a good old time. I cannot stress this enough. Meet your internet friends in real life. And man, we had a good black ass time at that live show. Shout out to comedian JL Colvin, who was the opening act for the podcast. He did about a 20-minute set, and he was extremely funny, man. I mean, from beginning to end. And then the host of the Black Guy Who Tips, Rod and Karen, they took the stage along with JL Colvin, and then their sidekick Justin. Shout out to Jay Trill, who's their sidekick on the offshoot, the Balls Deep Sports podcast. And so what the format with the live show is, they just have people in the crowd come up to the mic and then just recommend what show segment for them to do for the guest's request, so to speak. So they did like Guess the Race. They did banter, fucking with black people. And the thing I loved about it is that whenever he started playing the theme music for each segment, everybody was jamming. And it was one segment in particular that was produced and performed by the aforementioned Felt 5. And it was really cool to see him turn up with the rest of us, and he's in there and he's feeling the love and he's getting super involved. It was like seeing the character power up in a cartoon, man. God, that was such an amazing experience. And then getting to chop it up with Rod and Karen after the show. And shout out to Rod and Karen. They actually recommended a breakfast spot that I hit up on Saturday called Costa's Kitchen. I had the steak and egg omelet with the hash browns, man, and the patio cherry red soda that they no longer serve at Bojangles. They serve at Costa's Kitchen. See the Costa's or Costas. Either way, I ate myself silly again on that Saturday morning. And then after that, I made a trip over to Noda, which is a section in Charlotte, super artsy fartsy, which is right up my alley. You just walk down the streets, you walk down north of Davidson, and everybody's selling vintage clothes, people selling art. You smell incense, you smell some Chiba. That's my mix right there. And so as I was about to leave, I'm walking past the Johnston YMCA and I see a sign out front that says Charlotte Studio Artists Gallery. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. So just out of curiosity, I walked in and I was like, wow, it was real cool because in that YMCA, as soon as you walk through the entrance, it's just all of this art that's displayed by all these different local artists in Charlotte, and they're all of the artists for sale. And I actually got to meet another person in real life that I actually followed. Shout out to Walter Sanders. He's an artist in Charlotte. And meeting him and shaking his hand, and he was an extremely friendly and extremely gracious host. He took me around to every studio in the building and introduced me to every single artist. Man, that was really cool. And just chopping it up with them and admiring the art and just engaging in some great conversation, man, I'm glad I took that chance and walked into the Johnston YMCA. So if you're in Charlotte and have a taste for the arts, I highly recommend go to the Johnston YMCA and check out Charlotte Studio Artists at the Johnston YMCA. Their IG is at Charlotte Studio Artists. And so after I left there, I got in the car and I headed over to this spot, maybe about a mile down the road, called Starlight 22. And the good brother Gene Brown had an event there called Beat Freak. It was a show basically showcasing local talent in the Carolinas. And for those of y'all that don't know who Gene Brown is, he is a renowned vinyl collector, and some of your favorite hip hop producers, they hit him up to see what kind of vinyls that he may have, just like digging for records that they have on their mind. And he happened to have his vinyl pop up at Starlight 22. And so I was like, bet. So I can buy some more vinyls. And man, he had so many records that I was looking for in the $5 bin. So big shout out to Gene Brown. Man, I got the Main Ingredient album. It's the good brother Cuba Gooden Sr. on the front. He was the lead singer. So I got that one. Then after that, I copped the my guy Lattimore, the Liquor House music legend. Can't go wrong with Lattimore. And then, of course, got not one, but two Tyrone Davis albums. I got this one, Love and Touch, because it had my favorite song, Give It Up and Turn It Loose. I love that song. Then, of course, had to get this one. This If I Could Turn Back the Hands of Time. Man, that's a Liquor House staple right there. My high school janitors were the one to put me on the Tyrone Davis, so shout out to them. And then the Stax Record Chamber, I found this in the Gene Brown's $5 bin, the Waiting for Little Milton album on Stax Records. And the last song on this album is a top 3 personal favorite song of all time, which is Little Bluebird. It's a 6.5 minute, just a slow cook of a jam. And then this record right here, Keeping Love New by Howard Johnson. Y'all have no idea how long I've been searching for this album, specifically for the song So Fine, and then the song right after it, Say You Wanna. Say You Wanna is it, bro. That thing made me want to lace up my skates, and I can't skate to save my life. And then the last vinyl I got was Universal Love by MFSB. Anything with the Philadelphia International record label on the back of it, it's got that Gamble and Huff touch. That's an immediate cop, man. I was proud of my purchases. So yeah, shout out to Gene Brown for putting a signal out that he was going to be at the spot selling his vinyl, and I was so happy that he was there because, bro, I was covered in those vinyls for the longest time, and I was able to bring those home with me. Then, after I left Starlight 22, made my way back uptown to go to the Charlotte Hornets game, and they played the Washington Wizards, and I got to meet up with Rod and Karen again at halftime because they're both Hornet season ticket holders. And during halftime, we just were talking about how great the show was on Friday night. And every time I talk to them, I just tell them how much they inspire me and thank you for just doing what they do. And then we got to the subject of the Wizards and just how miserable newly acquired Chris Middleton, Charleston, South Carolina's own Chris Middleton, just how miserable he looked playing for the Wizards. And I don't blame him one bit, man. You could see it on his face. He's like, man, it just looked like he wasn't happy to be there. But The Hornets. Them poor Hornets. It don't make no sense how sorry the Hornets are. And for the Wizards to be equally as bad and to end up beating the Hornets by double digits, I'm like, man, it sucks to be a Hornets fan. But you know what? It is what it is, man. And then left the game, then walked over to the Epicenter, and then had a little post game meal at the Red Eye Diner over in the Epicenter. Had the good old spaghetti. That spaghetti ain't never steered me wrong. So then after that, I went back to the hotel. Then Sunday morning, slept in for a little bit, then went clocked out. Went and checked out of my hotel, then went to the gym again, and then after that, drove by the airport to check out the newly renovated airport overlook at Charlotte Douglas International Airport. And man, they did an incredible job with the renovation of that overlook. Because previously, I mean, it basically was just a parking lot. But this one, they got a parking space. They got a kids' playground. They actually got a fighter jet that's situated over in the corner of the overlook. They got food trucks that were there. It was, man, job well done. The Charlotte Douglas International Airport. They really did a great job with renovating the airport overlook. Then after I left there, went back to Uptown and just walked around some more, just getting some steps in, just getting some fresh air. And then later on that afternoon, I went back down to Noda again to meet up with my cousin Lanye, and we went and hung out at Growler's Poorhouse, which I highly recommend, especially on Sundays, because Sundays they do a dozen wings for $10. And it's always great, just reconnecting with her and then chopping it up, talking about how life is for her living in Charlotte now. And yeah, it was a great time. And then after that, we hugged and was like, all right, be safe. And then I got in my car and headed back down 77 to the Low Country. But actually had to make a quick stop in Columbia, because in between Columbia and Charlotte, I had the realization that there was no food in the fridge and I needed to get groceries. So I went and stopped at the Publix halfway home in Columbia, and then just knocked that out, and then got my groceries, got back in the car, and I got back to Long Ridge around about 8:45 on Sunday night. So yeah, that was a really fun time, and can't wait to do it again. I'm loosely entertaining the thought of going back up on the 29th because Dom Kennedy's doing the show there in Charlotte that Saturday night. I'm not sure if it's sold out or not. I'm mad I'm going to be missing the Tyler Creator show because he's going to be in Charlotte on the 26th, and I'm not going to be able to make that one, but oh well. And then leading up to this weekend, man, shout out to my dog Rick, man. Him and his wife and their friends, they're coming down from Atlanta to attend the Charleston Wine and Food Festival. And we always meet up. That's the Saturday of that festival just to do a restaurant crawl. And man, I cannot wait to just be in the company of those people again, man, because this is such a great time. And then after we do the restaurant crawl, we're going to find somewhere to watch the Duke North Carolina game. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to this weekend. So that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you like, download, and subscribe to Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend about the podcast. You can find me on IG at Danny Foxworth 843. You can find my YouTube channel, which is also at Danny Foxworth 843. There you can find all the videos for episodes of this podcast, as well as my other podcast, my baseball podcast, At the Plate with Danny Foxworth, A Wicked Good Time with Danny Foxworth, which is my Candle podcast, and my other podcast, Grown Up Low Country with Liz and Danny. And this has been another episode of Since We Last Spoke. I'm your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth. Thank you for listening, and until next time, y'all be good. Peace.